maybe we can start with the grand final of the WKPDC 2013. After 6 preliminary rounds and 3 out rounds, we came to the grand final. In the final today we have on the affirmative side, Team Lithuania. Team Lithuania today, Simonas Barkulis, Egle Kavalionaite, and Justinas Mickus. On the negative side in today's debate, we have Team Pakistan B, represented by Daniel Nasir, Syed Assad Zafar Haider, and Muhammad Hassan Kaiser Khan. Judging this final will be a panel of 9 judges. First of all, we'll start introducing them. Judging this final will be Tia Basilio, coming at her 3rd youth forum. She runs an academy for speech and debate back in California. Very successful debate coach. Her teams have made to numerous out rounds and finals. Further on we have Sherzod Abdul-Jaborov, coming at his 1st global youth forum after representing Tajikistan at the Asian Youth Forum 2013 in Kyrgyzstan. Also we have Catherine McCullough, coming from Ireland, teaching currently in Cyprus, coaching public speaking for years. This is her 1st debate tournament. She's been doing very well. Further on, we move on to Balázs Dezseny, also his 1st forum, coaching for Hungary, running the Debating Society of Hungary, convener of the GDPPC 2013. Further on, we have Lazar Kopivanov, this year and the previous year as the leader of the coaches and judges track, previously coming as a debater, coach, and MPT trainer. Further on, we have the CEO of this tournament, Mr. Manos Moskopoulos. WEDC Best PSL Speaker. I was reminded to mention this thing. Also, we have the leader of the British parliamentary track, Mr. Josh Martin, coming from the United States. After this, he will be going to the US Open to coach tennis. Very successful tennis coach. Also won the US National Championships on a more relevant terms, the US National Debate Championships in 2007. Also, we have Mark Woolsey from This is his forum, and he's also the honorary Serbian debate coach. Chairing this final will be Kai Klandar from Estonia. Give her a round of applause. She had to put up with all the late ballots in this tournament. She had to put up with all the unreadable numbers and writings on your ballot. So she will be chairing this final, and I'll give the floor to Kai now.
Once again, congratulations to Team Lithuania and Pakistan B for making to the finals. And the floor is yours. Affirmative first. Lithuania. You have 6 minutes, and Josh will be showing you time.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, 50 years ago in India, there lived a man whose first name is so complicated to pronounce that I won't even try to attempt it. However, his last name is Mr. Ramunajan. That name is written into the history of mathematics in golden letters. Why? Because when he started with a book called Basic Mathematics, he discovered that with a principle of using number pi, he can actually calculate all other mathematical equations. And even though I don't understand mathematics, that apparently caused a revolution in higher mathematics. And we here propose the world where there would be many more Indians like that, many more people like that, and many more benefits that we got from people like that. That's what we want to do. That's the world we want to achieve. And dear ladies and gentlemen, the model under which we'll achieve this world will be such. Academic work produced by universities will be uploaded to internal sectors of the servers of the universities by the paid staff or librarians, will be classified and peer reviewed there, and the governments of each nation will classify their own national university databases so that maximum efficiency and clarity would be established. That's how our policy will work. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the basis of our policies is such. It lays on two cornerstones. First of all, the current status quo, as we have it, is an obstruction to science and global learning. And second, the new world would empower the society and the people within it. So on first, dear ladies and gentlemen, how is the status quo bad? 4 points on that. The first one, dear ladies and gentlemen, in today's world, the negative articles do not get published in the academic world. What are the negative articles? Those articles that do not prove something right, do not find something new, but rather show that some tests done to prove a hypothesis or reach a hypothesis have failed, do not get published. Why is that? Where's the logical link? Because academic journals are for profit. They want to be relevant, they want to be prestigious, so they only usually publish what is relevant, what is new, what is groundbreaking. And that's why, as Nature itself, the leading biological magazine, reports, there are negative articles are far outnumbered in relation to positive articles by 5 times as even, dear ladies and gentlemen. And there are tangible harms in that. Dear ladies and gentlemen, one example to illustrate that. In 1980s, dear ladies and gentlemen, in order to cure arrhythmia induced by heart attacks, a drug was tested. It failed its initial test because 1/5 of the people tested on the drug died. However, the test results were not published. And in the course of 5 years, because the research continued on that, because researchers did not know that that research, that way of doing drugs, failed, dear ladies and gentlemen, 100,000 people died. And that's what we don't want. And that's why we want to remove this obstruction of science, that is the academic journals that only post positive results. So that's first way of how the status quo is harmful to science. Secondly, dear ladies and gentlemen, the academic journals do not publish research articles that are not in line with mainstream science. Again, for the same reasons, to maintain their relevancy, to gather profit. That's their publishing bias, which we want to get rid of. And dear ladies and gentlemen, we've seen tons of examples. One of the most prominent one was when Cambridge University researched that the effects of man on the global climate change are negligible. It was denied from all the basic ecological journals because it was not in line with mainstream science. So that's again something that we don't want, because we want various opinions to induce global learning. Dear ladies and gentlemen, third point how science is obstructed. Journals that purchase articles, that publish articles, have copyrights on them, especially in the fields like robotics, energetics, engineering, and so on, mostly by like Institute of Energy and Engineering in Japan, and they have copyrights up to 2 years. However, the fields that their copyrights exist in are fastly growing, fastly changing, and we see a monopoly of knowledge and then monopoly of profit rising because of this. And that's what we don't want, dear ladies and gentlemen, because if we had open access to that, we could change lives in a meaningful manner. Now we cannot. An obstruction of science to science right there. The last point, dear ladies and gentlemen, universities in impoverished nations cannot access journals. Only 20% of African universities can even subscribe academic journals, 2 of them. Dear ladies and gentlemen, that's something bad for global learning, that's something we don't want, and that's how the status quo obstructs science. On the second point, the second argument, how it would empower people in the world. Global aspect of it, we would have, again, African universities in Asia benefiting from access to research that they have. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we would have nations such as Kenya having access to the research in Cornell on agriculture, which is crucial for them because of their dire agricultural conditions. We see Wharton's economic findings benefiting the nations where they try to build the newly established economies, and so on and so on. What is furthermore the case, that most of the research at Harvard, Princeton, Oxford, you name it, dear ladies and gentlemen, it is focused on those developing regions, on Africa, on Asia, and Southeast Asia, and so on and so on. And it's crucial for the researchers working in those nations to know what the research is going on about, in order to benefit the people within those nations. That's what we want to do. So that's a global empowerment of the people around the world by removing the current status quo. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the second thing is the professionals that only need knowledge, not necessarily a degree even high school students, professionals who just want to have reference points, or students that want to access more information writing their bachelor thesis. All of these people would benefit greatly from greater access to various opinions around the world, and that's what we want again in order to move the society forward. And lastly, but not the least, dear ladies and gentlemen, we want to outreach to the victimized groups. Women in Muslim countries who, for the societal pressures, do not get defense in laws. Rape victims in India that sometimes have their defendants turn against them because of societal pressure, they would get access to law articles, they could practice their own defense, and they would benefit themselves greatly. This is the world we're trying to propose, and this is the world we want the judges to decide to live in. Thank you so much.
Team Pakistan, we need some prep time for cross-examination. And it seems we're ready for the first cross-examination of this debate.
Sir, do you believe intellectual property rights exist?
Yes, I do.
Then would you be giving any sort of credit, any sort of reward to these publishers whose work you are now putting out to the open for free?
Publishers do not have intellectual property as such because they only publish what has been produced by university professors, university staff, researchers, and so on and so
So
on.
these professors who make this work, would you give them any credit or any
Of
reward?
course, because they would still have credit and retain their rights to their work. It would only be published in a different medium for free and accessible.
But in the status quo, a lot of universities, a lot of professors already put out their work in open sources. But this debate is, don't you not feel this debate is more about those who would like to retain this information and give it out for a certain price?
No, I see that they retain it because universities pressure the researchers not to publish all of their information because it's not a common policy, it's not a universal policy.
So what is your justification to take away the right of these A, universities, or B, professors who put in their timeless work?
I do not separate universities and professors, they work in partnership and they
Okay,
work.
fine, then what would you do to take away their collective right of their efforts, their hard-earned work, and everything that they put in terms of the rights they have over the work?
Sir, I do not see any way in which their rights over their work produced would be
You are
diminish.
now putting out things for open to anybody to access. How is that not taking away the right to give it to selective people such as selective universities?
I do not see any contradiction here because they would retain the rights over their work and they would still have the
So you're
references
saying
on their name and
so
so
you're
on.
saying
and
you
so
will
forth.
not get an open access. So if suppose a professor does not want to give it to anybody, he can do that.
No.
You just said they still have the rights over the work.
No, I said that regardless if it's open access or published in an
Alright.
academic journal, they still retain their rights.
We don't know what rights you're talking about. We'd like clarification in second speech. Thank you. Moving on. In times of a famine, would you give out food for free?
Well, I cannot say this on a purely theoretical question. You know, I
Would
cannot
you,
answer
would you,
this
would
question
you
just
not
like
pay
that.
the people who produce that food in times of a famine?
I think it would be a mixed policy of giving some food, aiding some producers, and so
Exactly.
on and so on.
So those people who give it out for free, you would let them. But other people who don't, you would still pay them even though the dire need may exist.
Sir, even though it's an elaborate analogy, it does not really make sense in this debate.
Because, okay, so if third world countries are suffering in terms of universities, right, suppose the famine, would you still by the end of the day pay these professors or not?
Professors in the developing countries.
Professors who make this work, who you're trying to reach out to development countries for.
Could you paraphrase this question? I don't see how it's relevant to the
Never
debate.
mind, sir, never mind. Do you feel an open source, feel that open source model is feasible?
I do. I just laid out how.
Then what about the Utah State University, which ran out of funds simply because they wanted to have an open source model?
Well, to counter one example with another, I have Massachusetts, Manchester, Oxford,
Exactly.
and all
So all of these
in the UK
universities-
which did not. So,
So the,
that's
all of these
not a
uni-
point,
right, so
not
all-
a relevant point.
All of these
And we're
universities who already have open source. May I,
Thank you, Doc.
And it seems that Pakistan is ready.
First of all, they started talking about negative articles. Why is it such a problem if negative articles aren't published, if they are just simply reiterations of previous research? We don't see a problem. Second of all, they talk to you about how these articles do not agree with mainstream science. It's not quite as simple as the fact that people don't want science to advance. They're peer reviewed by other professors who often exclude them because A, their research methods may not be correct, that research may not be reproducible, that research may be inaccurate, it may be plagiarized. So we feel that if something like that is happening, it happens for a reason, and that reason is controlling the quality that they seem to not talk about. They say that we will peer review it. How? How will a university internally peer review its own articles? And if you feel that it will internally peer review them, how do you stop a university from glorifying its own articles and saying that they're all correct and then publishing them and throwing them out? In fact, bigger universities will be able to capitalize because Harvard can then lie about how good its articles are, say that we as Harvard have peer reviewed them, they're wonderful, and people will eat it up because Harvard is Harvard. That said, third point. They said copyrights are a bad thing, intellectual property rights are a bad thing. Why are they a bad thing? Why, if I spend 20 years of my life working on an article, should I not have rights over it? Then they agreed. There are certain rights that these professors have. They agree they are allowed to identify themselves as the owners of this work. So why can you not sell your work? For example, public prosecutors, they provide a public service. But they're not asked to do it for free. They're paid for it. They have a right to refuse to provide that service. They take that job on. And we then talk to them about food aid. When you give food aid to Africa, you don't just snatch it from farmers from all over the world. You pay those farmers yourself. So in no case can you take away that right to do whatever you want with your job, with your work. Fourth point of contention. They say that Africa won't get these articles. First of all, we do not see what important research is going on in Africa that they need super tier important articles. Why would you provide Kenya articles on quantum science? Agriculture we understand, and we understand that the limited number of articles that they do need are provided, and why can't they provide it the same way as food aid is being provided if it is so important? Fifth point, students don't get these articles. First of all, we believe that's untrue. Most students and most researchers who need these articles are already working with universities that have selected them on their basis and that their ability to use that research, and we feel at that point, sixth of all, they said that oppressed women in countries like, say, Pakistan or Iran will get these articles. Why do you need an advanced paper on law research to know about your rights as a woman or as a, say, homosexual? We don't understand. There are already feminist movements existing in these places. They don't need research articles. They don't need university lectures. Finally, they say that universities suppress certain types of research. First of all, they've given us no evidence for that. Second of all, we believe that that's untrue. Finally, they say that universities already have open source programs. If they have open source programs and are willingly doing some things where they agree to do it, why do you want to do more than they're agreeing to do? That said, we're going to talk to you about two main things. We believe that what happens to his or her work should remain the choice of the creator of the content, be it a lecture, a textbook, or an article. And second, we feel like you're threatening a number of very valuable systems that are in place that improve and accelerate academic advancement. Let's move on to the first argument. I've already given you the analogy of a public prosecutor or of food aid that you give to places like Africa. And that's the entire point. It is these people's work. It may be public service, but it is their job. That's like saying that anybody who has a job that is in any way benefiting society should now start doing it for free. You can't force people to do charity or say we will fire you. That's not right. That contravenes the entire point of doing something, of doing a public service. Second of all, it's not that they have any other means of income either, because for a lot of researchers, this is it. It's 15, 20 years of education, another 15, 20 years of research. After that, they will publish maybe one article that is supposed to be groundbreaking. Why are you taking it from them? Why should they not have the right to do what they want with it? To let the people that they want, the people that need to benefit from it, benefit. We don't understand, and we feel that that right should be given. In fact, it's not a free service. According to Nature, which they so gladly quoted, the cost of publishing a journal is nearly $40,000 per issue. Where are you going to bring that money from? They never answered that either. That said, a lot of researchers don't want to publish their articles open access. For example, in a survey by Nature, 23,000 scientists were pursued. In the highest percentage, people researching biology, only 17% thought that their articles should be open access, and these people have the means to do so. But it went as low as chemistry, where only 4% thought, what is wrong with letting those 96% do what they want? That said, let's talk to you about the valuable systems that they're threatening. First of all, we feel that this hurts journals and this hurts the rates of knowledge production. Why is that? Because journals provide two very important things, the peer review and quality control. What they do is they take your articles, they send them to other researchers of different universities and allow them to assess the quality of that research. When that does happen, they publish it. Now what happens when you literally have a free-for-all? Because that is what they're saying. Bombard the world with articles. First of all, no peer review is going to happen. If they say it is, they need to explain to us how. When that peer review doesn't happen, how do you know which articles are better? Which pieces of research are better, more reliable? You don't know that. What does that lead to? That leads to one, a bias for bigger universities, because then the only standard of judgment you have is that maybe this is a Harvard article, probably better than a, say, State University article. Second of all, what happens is that you can't judge the quality of professors because this is how you judge their ability to do research and do their work, and when you can't have that, there's a problem. Because they haven't shown you a single reason why you can contravene the rights of these professors and how they're benefiting us, vote opposition.
Thank you, Team Pakistan, for your first negative speech. We're ready for a cross-examination.
Sir, is it not important to repeat them? Is it important to repeat the mistakes of the past?
I don't see how you're repeating the mistakes of the past here.
If we're saying that in the past there was actually a study done, and if we actually not publish it, should we publish it?
Alright, the example that you gave was an internal research study by a pharmaceutical company and comprises pharmaceutical malpractice,
Sir,
not a
could
university.
have we avoided this problem?
Absolutely not. This pertains
How?
to private research firms who are doing pharmaceutical development, not universities.
Sir, how would these companies could have known the problem with the drug if the results were not published in the first place?
These results weren't going to be published in journals. They were going to be published in the internal reports of pharmaceutical standards, which are then given to the pharmaceutical agencies of countries like the FDA in the United States. This has absolutely nothing to do with the motion.
Okay, going on to another actual point. Will the journals disappear?
Absolutely. We feel that they will have no incentive to stay in place because nobody is going to pay, say, what? Any amount of money for an article that
Sir,
they take free
what is the
online.
readership of these articles, of these journals?
They're university professors, they're students.
Approximately, what is the readership?
I would have no idea.
It's about 200 actual copies. So what does it mean? What does it mean?
Absolutely not. Are you telling me that these journals have only 200 readers around the world?
No, sir, what we're saying is that the readership of these articles are a specific group that like to have these articles actually in one place.
A specific group.
Why will the university, why will actually they disappear if they like their articles in one journal?
Why would they want to pay for an article that they can just plagiarize online?
Okay, sir, going to another question. Where do academics get money?
Well, a lot of them get money from their universities, which employ them.
Okay, how actually how will they lose money by articles, by our policy?
We don't feel that they're losing money. That's not the point. The point is that they're losing the choice to do what they want with those articles. We can't...
Sir, already the university has the power to tell the academics whether to publish or not. How is that going to change in your world?
First of all, if they feel that the universities are being unfair, they don't need to work for universities. Second of all, we don't feel that such a thing does happen in
Sir,
this
who
country.
has copyrights when you publish in journals?
Journals have copyrights.
Sir, do they know they split copyrights?
Yes?
So we were saying that only journals have copyrights.
No, we feel that these professors willingly give up their rights to these professors. They choose to do what they want, and that choice is what we stand for.
Okay, thank you.
And it seems that the second speaker is ready to provide us with the attention of Lithuania.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, since I only have 5 minutes and we have 2 cases in this debate, what I'm going to do is break it down into 2 main issues of this debate. First of all, I'm going to talk about whether improving science is more important than rights to property and whether these rights to property actually exist. And the second of all, I'm going to talk about our second point, which was largely technically contended, but not really, about how it's going to empower people who don't need the degree from a university, however, they need the knowledge from the university. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the first point about improving science versus right to property, what we were talking about, how the status quo currently disapproves and actually obstructs science, and we had 2 main points of contention. We said that academic journals are currently the only publishing force of articles. What does that mean? We see that journals currently are a commercial institution, and as a commercial institution, they have a publishing bias of what they want to publish. So they're not going to publish somebody that's going against mainstream science. And we see that in the 50s, Alice Stewart wasn't published, even though she discovered that X-rays have significant harms to babies when pregnant ladies are X-rayed, and it causes cancer. However, ladies and gentlemen, only 25 years after she was published by journals, because, ladies and gentlemen, journals, it was against the commercial interests of these academic journals at the time to do it. Now, what we also said is that there's this publishing bias in terms of all the negative articles and negative results that are being published. And Nature itself said that we could have prevented 100,000 deaths if open access was provided. How does that happen? Take an example with a medicine called reboxetine. Nature published, it was effectively known that reboxetine works in 50% of the cases, and in 50% of the cases it doesn't work. However, when academic journals publish this information, only 10% of the information of how it doesn't work was published, as opposed to the rest being published of how it works, ladies and gentlemen. So we see that this informs the public. It doesn't show, actually, the people, and it doesn't show the academia of the world how these drugs don't work. And therefore, we result into ineffective medicine. And this isn't, ladies and gentlemen, a private publication of a pharmaceutical company, ladies and gentlemen. This is the very same magazine that they have talked about in their speeches, which is Nature, which is one of the most read biomedical science journals, ladies and gentlemen, which they themselves said that open access could have easily prevented that because somebody with the internet, with the spread of the internet, could have picked it up and could have trended within society. Now let's talk about rights a little bit. So they have a misconception that you sort of have rights over what you produce when you're a university professor, which is completely false, ladies and gentlemen. We see that universities, first of all, get money from research grants when they conduct the research. Afterwards, ladies and gentlemen, it is for their own personal prestige to publish it in journals, ladies and gentlemen. They don't get paid for that because the university owns their research, ladies and gentlemen, because they have used the university's facilities and they have used the government's grant or a private institution's grant in this case. And we see that journals still will not disappear in this case. We're still going to have peer review, which is largely free under the status quo because people want to peer review their peers in science. And we see that people are still going to buy journals because there's a specific group that's constantly interested in these journals because they have assembled all of the information into one place that's highly categorized and highly peer reviewed. So we see that under both statuses, the journals are going to disappear. However, we're going to lose the monopoly of the journals in this case. Second argument, ladies and gentlemen, about how it empowers people who don't need the degree but actually need the specific knowledge. And we've given you an example about how African universities largely do not have access as opposed to American or European universities who share their information between them. We see that African universities don't have that, ladies and gentlemen. And they said, well, why is Kenya going to need something on quantum quantum science? Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we see that Kenya might necessarily need Cornell's research in agriculture, because we see that why African nations mostly are poor is because they don't know how to maximize their efficiency right now, and this is going to provide them a way to do that. This is going to give them a clearer way of how to run their economy when they read, for example, Econometrics magazine. This is going to give them a way, ladies and gentlemen, to build dams when they read physicists who are in the developing world doing that. Now, they said women also don't need this for whatever reasons they gave us. We didn't quite clearly understand why not. We've given you an example how in India, a defense lawyer of a woman that was raped said, well, it was partly even her fault that she was raped. So we see that women in these countries might not necessarily be very well represented. However, with the knowledge, they could represent themselves better because they could be their own lawyer if they have read even a very uncomplicated if they had this access to this information, ladies and gentlemen. And lastly, they said most students already have access to all of this information through sites like JSTOR and all of that. Well, that directly contradicts their right to property point, because they're already under the status quo, giving free access to everybody that's affiliated with several universities, for example, in the United States or in Europe, ladies and gentlemen. We see a contradiction here. So for all these reasons, we beg you to vote.
And ready for registration from
Give us the example of Alice Stewart. You said 25 years later her research was published. So don't you feel that the problem that you have has already started to improve?
No, because thousands of babies have died from cancer within those 25 years. We see she wasn't published because it was against the commercial interest of the journals at the time. And we see when journals monopolize this system of publishing researchers, we see that there are certain drawbacks as opposed to when it is open to all.
If these drawbacks existed, 25 years later, why was it published?
Why was it published? Because it was no longer, because there was maybe more sufficient proof about how X-rays were detrimental. I am not sure.
We agree that there was better research available, more reliable research available.
Are you not?
And quality increased, and that's why journals published them.
And people who died from it in the 25 years between, we shouldn't really care about them, right?
Right. So we should now let faulty research in, which can potentially kill people. Yes.
What?
We can let in now faulty research that may potentially kill people.
No, because it's going to be assessed. It's still going to be assessed. What we're trying to do is we're trying to increase. We're trying to increase the spread. If somebody is going to pick up on a Alice Stewart-like article in the internet, they're going to read it. There's going to be more spread.
Right.
However, in the end, it's going to be have to be assessed.
People who say nothing about advanced medicine and physiology judge these articles?
First of all, we see that there are a lot of professors who don't get published. However, other professors might be interested in their work. So that's first.
So, a lot of these professors publish these articles, do peer review because they feel that there's a prestige attached to reviewing articles for good journals.
And that's still going to be done in journals.
Doesn't exist.
That incentive will exist. I've explained to you how journals are still going to exist because they have a different function than just...
Alright, if they're still going to exist, to agree that they do provide a certain value, that they do have a certain important part.
Look, Nature magazine is not People magazine. People don't buy it for entertainment. People buy it because it's their job to know what's in them. Therefore, we see that it's still going to exist.
Right. Tell me something. When you freely give out research into Kenya, what will these Kenyan universities, what incentive will they have to produce their own research specific to Africa that may be more useful?
Because they'll want to be the authors of that research, they'll want to make that advancement in science, and we see that as the main incentive why people conduct research.
So what they're going to do basically is take a Harvard piece of research from Harvard, add a couple of lines to it.
No, they're going to take Harvard, for example, economics magazine or an economics article, make their economic situation somewhat better, and then they're going to have a better infrastructure for their universities to conduct their own research. We do not support plagiarism. We do not support re-editing of these articles online when you download them on your computer.
Explain to us why they want to do it, why they want to make that effort. When
because it's nice to do a major scientific discovery. I don't know, because it helps society. Because that's what scientists do.
Right. So you think that they're going to spend billions of dollars on that research that you...
Yes, they would, because they would get grants if they actually have a good research plan.
But
that's how it happens in the developed world as well.
But they don't have a good research plan, that's the problem, isn't it?
Understand two contradictions and one misconception on the part of Team Proposition. They said, well, journals won't vanish. So they don't want journals to vanish, ladies and gentlemen, because they realize and recognize the importance of it. What is the importance of journals, ladies and gentlemen? They provide you three things. They provide you delivery, they provide you curation, they provide you peer review. They said, ladies and gentlemen, peer review will still exist because people are inherently good. No, ladies and gentlemen, as they themselves said, these professors want prestige. Prestige is directly linked to, ladies and gentlemen, them peer reviewing for high good journals like Nature, ladies and gentlemen, which ultimately have a profit incentive. So if they're not making money, these journals, ladies and gentlemen, they will not exist in their model because their profit incentive vanishes. Secondly, they said, well, the reason why the research was published 25 years later was because it needed to be assessed. And that is exactly what you're telling you, ladies and gentlemen. They want assessment of their very research. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you have this system in place which assesses research and then filters out their negative hypothesis, which filters out, ladies and gentlemen, their non-mainstream ideas, then what problem do they have with our model? We still don't understand. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, the misconception that they're working with is that no knowledge exists in the status quo. What we're telling you, ladies and gentlemen, is open access. If people want to do it, then they can do it. That information will exist. However, if people don't want to make their information open access, then it is their right to do so in the first place. Why do you, ladies and gentlemen, pay farmers in poor countries even if they're making a produce? Because you recognize that they worked hard for it, they have a right to it. A, it is their right to make profit of it. B, it is their right to have this prestige associated with it, something which they're not recognizing. With that, now let's come to the two issues that I'll be talking about, which will be basically our arguments, which is A, they have a right, and B, the setting valuable system. Within my first argument, I'll tackle the argument about empowering society. So, ladies and gentlemen, we need to empower society because, in Asia, people don't have access to it. Principally, ladies and gentlemen, we're not against access of people in Asia. However, if that access comes at the cost of you depriving these researchers and universities of their right, then we're not okay with it. And if you so want this information to exist, ladies and gentlemen, then why not simply pay these journals? Why not simply pay these systems, ladies and gentlemen, because that information is inherently crucial. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, they said, well, you're victimizing groups and rape victims. Rape victims, scholarly articles, course books, we don't understand the link, ladies and gentlemen, because information, people who want to provide open access still exist. However, if open access comes at the cost of you taking away rights of certain individuals, rights to prestige, right to profit, right of universities, ladies and gentlemen, to invest in research, we believe it is not justified. Which is linked to the second argument, which is about these practical consequences of team propositions. Yes, I'll divide the consequences into three parts. A, how you're disincentivizing professors. B, how you're disincentivizing journals and how they will not exist, thus diminishing their need. And C, how universities will have a disincentive. First things first, ladies and gentlemen, let's understand this. The reason why your investors or your people, ladies and gentlemen, your researchers, your academics will not want to work in the system is because they're not getting a reward out of it, because they know that even if they come up with a cure to cancer, which is the biggest scientific discovery that there is, they will not get any money out of it. They will not get any profit. They will not get any reward. It's not about the profit. It's about the reward. It's about the prestige. So, ladies and gentlemen, they will want to work with private investors who at the end of the day are paying them and giving them due credit for their research. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, one major reason why these people publish in journals in the first place is because it adds credibility. It lends credibility to their already burgeoning reputation. And that is what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen. If a Harvard law graduate, if a Harvard academic is writing in a journal like Nature, which is peer-reviewed by other academics from Yale, etc., it adds to their reputation, ladies and gentlemen. This is directly linked to the prestige argument. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, this moves on to a second part, which is about how you're harming journals. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, when you're having open access, journals will not want to exist. It is simple. I'm a businessman, I'm a journalist, I want to publish my research for money, I want to be paid for my service. When I'm not being paid for my service, I will not exist. Because, ladies and gentlemen, open access is about providing them for free, right? So they don't have incentive to exist. What then ends up happening is, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Firstly, you will have a chaotic world of endless articles, ladies and gentlemen. You will have no compass, no quality metric, no standard to judge which article is good. Secondly, you will have a bias. A bias meaning, ladies and gentlemen, that people will only read articles from Harvard and Stanford, not because they're good. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you have no peer review, no one to judge which article is good. Something which journals provide. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, now let's move on to the third part, which is you're disincentivizing the universities. It's not about only journals. It's also about coursebooks. It's also about scholarly hours. It's also about recorded lectures. This, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Risk universities won't want to invest. The reason why they have no incentive to invest is because exclusivity is being taken away from them. The reason why Harvard and Stanford are valued so much is because they have their information private. The quality is set so high because not everyone has access to it in the first place. When you're providing them access, you're taking that away. Secondly, what you're doing is, ladies and gentlemen, you're diminishing the standard because everyone has access to it. And lastly, you're allowing poor universities to skim off their research. Firstly, you're taking away their right, which is primarily theirs. Secondly, you're threatening valuable systems, which will mean less quality information in the first place. Thank you.
And we're ready for the last cross-examination of this debate.
Sir, do you fundamentally oppose, say, Deep River Rock being a company that provides you with water? One of the companies. Do you fundamentally oppose that?
I believe they should be given a prize for that water, yes.
But would you oppose the fact that it would be the only company in the world, the only way we could get drinkable water? Would you oppose the monopoly of that?
That's what I'm saying. If the value that they're providing is so very great, then they deserve to be accredited and rewarded.
Sir, do you not see a drawback in the fact that the majority of the articles of today, the great majority, can only be accessible if you have the money, connections, and so on via for-profit magazines?
Do you realize why that exists? Because you realize that these articles are very important. There needs to be a great incentive to make those articles. So the reason
Sir, would you not agree? Thank you. Would you not agree that it is at least in partially because there is not a single other alternative of how to access that information but through the commercial journalists? That's why they value it, because there's no other way.
What we're saying is you have the option to choose. Your alternative can exist. However, you cannot force that alternative onto researchers and universities.
Thank you. Sir, could you please explain to me how peer review works, just in general? What is peer review and how
Peer
it
review
works?
basically works this way, that you have an article which is sent to a magazine to be reviewed. It is reviewed by academics from other universities which are of similar standard.
Okay, thank you. How, hypothetically, could it work just by having some organized partnerships between universities and professors doing peer review for themselves for the greater knowledge of the world? Could it work like that?
You yourself said professors don't work for money, they work for prestige. I have shown to you how prestige is given by these journals.
Would it shake your world if I said that it was already happening, that partnerships between professors and universities exist, and peer review happens on a voluntary basis too?
Exactly. We're saying it is a choice. However, you cannot threaten the
Sir.
valuable system that exists in the status quo.
So if you say that peer review exists on a voluntary basis, you would agree that it would not disappear just by that, by not having commercial for profit academic
If
journals.
was so very beneficial, then people won't access journals. The reason why journals exist
Okay.
and the status quo exists is because these journals are so very valuable.
Thank you, sir. Sir, is plagiarism legal now?
No.
Would we make plagiarism legal?
But if you're not okay with these people being credited for their research, being rewarded for their research, then
Sir,
should
but
be okay
if I
with
have
plagiarism
credits
as well.
to my research, which is published just in another media, do I still retain my
So
rights?
if I have a right to get credit for it, why don't I have a right to get prestige for it, to get rewarded for it, principally?
But if you do, what we've said, because you're peer-reviewed, you're published in the National Register and so on and so on, where is that fundamental loss of intellectual property rights and so on and so forth?
Are these people peer reviewing me more important than the 9 people peer reviewing me over there?
I would say all of these people equally matter because, that's what you would believe. Thank you, sir. Would you believe that academics in Kenya, in Nairobi, could access information by other academics and build upon it?
And you have open access for people who choose to want that. So your voluntary good researchers that you have out there can
Thank
still
you,
give
sir.
out their information. What is your problem?
And the final speech from Lithuania.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we see on the opposition is Team Pakistan that neglects every single fact we tell us, actually did not refuse any points that we have, did not actually prove it, why journalists will actually extinct under our policy, because we never heard actually any clear explanation why they will, because we already explained a lot that their readership is little, their readership is a prestigious group that will read under the status, that already read under the status quo and will read under our model. So without further ado, let me tell you what is this debate about. This debate comes down to two questions. First of all, can science benefit and can the scientific community benefit from our policy? And later on, talking about can we benefit the public and the people who need the access? Going on the first point, because basically they neglected the point when we told about negative results and how are they very influential to the community about it. Because basically they told us that it's probably not that smart results or probably not that good evidence. But what we actually told you that 25 years later on, it was published because the results were actually accurate. And we see that during those 25 years, we could have saved people. The only reason why we did not publish, because it does not have any emotional shock, because there is no, because negative results don't have emotional shock. We see that this already does not have a contribution for the magazine itself, because they already published bias. They want only the profit. And we do not support a policy upon a monopoly of science can only be had on journals. And I'm going to expand this idea later on. But only what we see that we should have this access, we should have seen these people, and we will never support a model where we're under the policy. Also, what they actually told us about was the rights of professors. First of all, they have none, ladies and gentlemen. We told you that universities already have copyrights on their work. Already we see that. First of all, about the money. Again, they get money not because they publish articles, because they get grants to publish articles. We don't see, and please respond to that. Also, what we see that they are driven by the fact that their name will be published under the article. We already said this, the driving motive for them to publish the article in the first place. And we already don't understand why they won't publish in the first place. Also, going on the point about journals. First of all, why they will extinct, we never heard. Because we already said there's a little prestige group that read these articles because they probably like it and because it's comfortable. Also, what they actually said, that it was probably their job to read those magazines in the first place. We already said they have to do it and the magazines won't disappear. Also, what they actually made a very big logical fallacy about the peer reviews. Because we actually explained during the cross-examination that under the status quo, these peer reviews are voluntary, ladies and gentlemen, meaning that professors right now do it on their own basis. What will happen under our model? We never heard. Why one morning one professor will say, I will never publish you, I will never peer review you again. We never heard any explanation. We would like to hear it in your speech. Also, what we actually opposed on this, we did never oppose the magazine as a whole. What we oppose in this debate is that they have the monopoly of science controlling what the public can actually access from the knowledge and what cannot. Going on the second point, how we can benefit the public. Because what we have heard for this debate is about that people in Kenya do not need this access. What they will do with this knowledge, it is nonsense. Ladies and gentlemen, we see huge benefits for these countries because what we actually say that these countries right now do not have access for the money because they have no access. When we provide the example that only 20% of African universities have subscriptions, ladies and gentlemen, this is crucial. When we see that rape victims in India do not have legal basis to put a case, they actually the only thing that they did, they showed us their hands. We see that they rape victims and scholarly articles. We see no correlation because we see that it is important for women to have access for this knowledge because it can help. We have never heard without any explanation why they do not deserve it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we believe it is important for people to know. It's important for people to know how to benefit and how to improve the society. So, ladies and gentlemen, Team Lithuania stands against a monopoly of science. We stand for improvement of science. We stand for improving the society of knowing knowledge that is necessary for their basic lives. Ladies and gentlemen, we propose.
This debate has boiled down to three main issues. Firstly, the role of journals and how them shutting down is a bad thing. Secondly, is it justified in this situation to take away the rights of producers over content they produce? And lastly, will third world countries benefit from scholarly articles? So first things first, let's talk to you about whether or not journals shutting down is a good thing and will that happen. Now there were two contradictions the third speaker made in her speech. Firstly, they had to prove to us how scholarly articles may be given to all people. They considered that journals will not, or we never proved to them, how journals will go extinct in their model. So they conceded the fact that, well, journals will exist in their model, so certain people will still have certain information that others may not have, considering journals may still exist. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, if the readership is so limited, if it's just 200, as they said in the cross-examination, then what's the need? Then where does this problem lie if this idea is that the information is so limited and going to just a few people, ladies and gentlemen? We never understood. We never understood if this is so elite-centric, if it's so limited, ladies and gentlemen, then what is the problem if the information is so small? Apart from that, ladies and gentlemen, we told you the benefits of peer reviews, which they never tackled. The only one they tackled was peer reviews, and I'll be telling you how that's problematic. If, ladies and gentlemen, journals shut down, the problem is that universities will now carry out self-peer reviews. If they do that, ladies and gentlemen, they can glorify their own work and just put it out there. This was never tackled by Team Estonia and their third speaker, Team Lithuania. I'm sorry. And the Team Lithuania and their third speaker speak, ladies and gentlemen. So, proving to you exactly how, ladies and gentlemen, two things. Firstly, there will be a problem. There is a problem, ladies and gentlemen. They can see to it. Hence, journals will exist, and certain people can have certain limited information which may be good. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, the problem is that the quality will drop, ladies and gentlemen, and they have conceded that. And we cannot be ready to let this quality drop by the end of the day. It is not just about giving all of the world any sort of information, ladies and gentlemen. It is about people getting good information, safe information, and not information that may lead to people dying of cancer. We are not ready for that. These journals guarantee it through curations, through peer reviews of the most prestigious sort of scholars, ladies and gentlemen. Hence, we're not ready for it. Now, the second issue. Is it justified in this situation to take away the rights of producers over the content they produce? So, ladies and gentlemen, they conceded and agreed to intellectual property rights existing. And they said they will give them credit. And in my cross-examination, they conceded, yes, money may be given to them if they want it. Now, here's the thing. These professors, ladies and gentlemen, or these universities want two things when they produce. And I don't really know why they wanted to create a distinction between professors and universities, ladies and gentlemen, because by the end of it, the end goal is the same. Now, they want two different things. Firstly, money, and secondly, prestige. Now, the idea of money is that it won't happen because you're trying to aim at a large public and a large number of people, and giving it out in such a large extent, ladies and gentlemen, will not be feasible, so you cannot pay them entirely. We gave them examples of Utah University, which had to shut down because of this feasibility. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, not okay. Secondly, prestige. We told you how exactly this won't happen because no journals, ladies and gentlemen, means no prestige, because no peer reviews and no one telling people that this journal is good, this journal is better, and this journal is the one which will make you go further ahead, ladies and gentlemen. Hence, the incentive that exists with these scholars in status quo will completely diminish, and we're not okay with that. Hence, they won't produce any work and they won't work any work, so the quality and the readership both will drop. Second, if the problem is so grave, ladies and gentlemen, here's what Hassan asked him and the third speaker never answered. If the problem is so grave, why don't governments in the status quo just pay these scholars and distribute these articles, ladies and gentlemen? Hence, proving to you that the need does not exist to such a large extent, something they should have answered, never did. Now, thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, here's the thing. If Team Estonia by the end of the Team Lithuania, honestly, that was an honest mistake. Team Lithuania, ladies and gentlemen, are the people who by the end of the day are these universities. God may or may not save the queen, but God, please save these professors. Because they claim they have no right whatsoever. They claim that these professors by the end of the day should not have any incentive to work, ladies and gentlemen. No rights, no return, no reward. They should just work like mules and then put out their work for free for everybody because they're such angels with halos over their head. That's not how it works, ladies and gentlemen. They need an incentive, they need a driving force, and you'll be taking that away from them. Hence, proving to you that the quality will drop. Thirdly, the choice, ladies and gentlemen. We told you how exactly, if there is so much of a choice that exists, you need to give them that so that by the end of the day, they can actually work. And ladies and gentlemen, if there is already open access to the status quo, what is the need? Never answered. Now, lastly, third world countries, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the thing that we want to prove to you, and this is a winning argument for the third world countries issue, ladies and gentlemen, and they never refuted this. What we said is that these third world countries, ladies and gentlemen, are called third world countries for a reason. They are a little behind first world countries like beautiful Ireland. So what we're saying is, ladies and gentlemen, that they need to produce their own work. They need to work themselves, and that incentive will go once everything is open to them. Things like plagiarism may be illegal, but they still might happen. So because the quality may drop, and because the readership will definitely drop, ladies and gentlemen, Team Negative wins KPDC 2013.